Well, yeah, thank you very much, everyone, today. Thanks everyone for joining us for this uh, latest robotics special interest group event. Bit of a different event today, celebrating some of the kind of achievements and the life of Professor Simon Blackmore. I thought I would start off just by kind of talking through some of the impact that his work had on me personally. So as some people may know, I used to for about 4 years worked for the small robot company. So we were pioneering the application of small robots in arable fields, basically using them to capture data, capture imagery, do sort of various actions in the field. So informed spraying, things like that. And then we're kind of pioneering along the long-term dream of kind of having robots on every farm doing various tasks, weeding, spraying, and even actually establishing crops. So that was all actually kind of initiated by Simon Blackmore. So he kind of inspired the two founders of Small Robot Company. It's so Sam Watson Jones and Ben Scott Robinson. Both reached out to him, I think, kind of separately, and he kind of provided the inspiration with his work and what he was doing in the agricultural robotics space, and also kind of provided that link between the two. So kind of put those two guys together. And although Small Robot Company is no more, I think it's certainly made it certainly kind of had an impact in the industry, and it's certainly inspired, I think, kind of the next generation of people, and kind of engineers stepping out into the agricultural engineering space, and kind of looking forwards to autonomy and robotics, and kind of how that can be applied. So I think it's, yeah, he's, although I had very few sort of personal interactions with him, my life was certainly twisted in a new direction by his work. So had a profound impact on me and my career, that's for sure. So I think I'll hand over to you, Kit, if that's okay, to sort of give a bit of your thoughts and feelings.
Yeah, absolutely right. So yeah, firstly, I'll say when the news got to me that Simon had died, I was actually very sort of shocked and saddened. As I put in my LinkedIn post that I put about it, it was it's no secret that Simon's work hugely impacted my career and everything I've done. I thought I would speak for a few minutes, and I don't have a massive script by any means in front of me, but just on two aspects. One, his impact as far as I can see, as a Harper Adams engineering employee on the department at Harper, and what he did since when he joined Harper in 2011. And also then that impact on me and how I first interacted with Simon, and sort of how those conversations and relationships that we sort of built, and then what I went and did beyond that. So, as I say, Simon joined our department in 2011. I'm going to also caveat it by saying I know there's many Harper colleagues on the call, and please feel free to add your thoughts later on and correct me on my errors that I'm going to make. But yeah, Simon joined the department in 2011. I was a student, as was Ray. We were both, we started at Harper, Ray and I, in 2008, and arrived in a department that was in some fairly old buildings that weren't particularly inspiring, and certainly weren't particularly technologically advanced. As someone who loved machinery and tractors and farm equipment, Harper did a very good job of that, but it really wasn't bleeding edge, cutting edge. And when Simon came to the department, when I was on my placement year, I got back to a department that seemed hugely reinvigorated. And Simon was certainly a catalyst for an awful lot of change, including the building of our mechatronics and agritech building, the AEIC. He certainly was fundamental in getting the funding and the planning for that through. He worked, lobbied the government essentially, which led to it led to engineering being noticed and included in the sort of agritech catalyst funding that came through Innovate UK, which of course has led to work being done across the country, but definitely at Harper, but also places like Lincoln. That funding that came through for agritech was hugely thanks to Simon's sort of work and his ability to communicate and his ability to tell those in the powers that be that agricultural engineering was needed and necessary, and these developments in precision farming and robotics and automation were critical for UK development. So those, not only Harper, but the reinvigorated sort of ag-eng research at various universities around the country have got Simon to thank, I would suggest. As I say, the AIC was, is suddenly, as I say, becomes a very fresh-faced building and makes engineering seem a lot more aspirational at Harper, which was really great. Also, in terms of then when we got back, talking from a more personal point of view, I remember, Ray, and you'll remember this as well, we suddenly were doing lit reviews on agricultural robotics and what that was going to mean for the future of agriculture. So that was when in our 4th years. And that really captured me. So this is, my personal story now, is suddenly the ideas that Simon was prescribing and what you found is every person who was writing papers on agricultural robots that we were finding, most of them had some sort of link to Simon. It doesn't matter where in the world it was from, it somehow could link back to Simon and a relationship that he had. Which was quite a good way of making us feel like we had a new head of department who was well placed in the world that we wanted to be in. The ideas around smaller, lighter, kinder to the soil, more precise with inputs, all of those completely captured my imagination. And in my master's year, that led to a couple of things, a couple of ways in which I worked very closely with Simon. We did a project, we had a module called Emerging Engineering Topics. And in that, we used to basically sit in his office and discuss all the ways in which technology might impact agriculture going forwards. Ideas such as, again, something I mentioned in my LinkedIn post, we talked about if we GPS logged every single seed in a field, we could go into that field and we could hoe around those seeds pre-emergence to reduce the use of chemicals in farming. And that seems so high tech, and we probably debated that idea for a good half hour or so when it came up. And there's many examples like that. But now we are sort of 13 years later, and the farm droid is a robot on sale commercially that does exactly that. It maps where every single seed that goes into the field is, and it goes back and it can pre-emergence weed. So those ideas that seemed pretty far-fetched and certainly caused vigorous debate, I would say, in our tutorials, are now sort of coming to the market. And obviously, I think when we hand over to Andy will probably be able to describe a few more examples like that stretch back a bit further. The other way in which I worked closely with Simon during my time at Harper as a student was we developed the first agricultural robot, as it were. Myself and a couple of colleagues, James Thomas and Chris White, who were all doing our masters, and we developed the Dionysus robot, which was essentially a quad bike that we automated and created the first sort of Harper-built autonomous machine. Again, and I use that now as a case in point of what was almost wrong with agricultural robotics when I give my talks now, in the sense that it was very good at driving around rugby pitch. We did lots of demonstrations on the cricket pitch and the rugby pitch in the car park, but we never really got it out into the field. And that really, I guess, leads on to obviously the way in which I have taken agricultural robotics forward the most, and that was by staying on at the Harper Adams as a researcher, working on lots of the projects that Simon brought through the door, so laser weeding, strawberry picking, all sorts of sort of robotic projects, Again, in fact, the laser weeding one is one I like to talk about because, again, when we were doing that, it seemed very far-fetched. It seemed like this was a bit too sci-fi, but now there is a company in California who will happily sell you a laser weeder to go in and laser weed your lettuces. So, you know, these things that these ideas that Simon was so keen on are now certainly in the field. But one thing that frustrated me maybe about Simon's work is sometimes he got caught up in the detail a little bit for my liking. And one of those details was some of the safety. And a lot of our autonomous projects at Harper kept getting sort of stuck, as far as I could see, as a enthusiastic and ambitious young researcher, behind these sorts of overly complicated safety regimes that stopped us getting in the field and actually doing anything other than drive around car parks. And it was that frustration and sort of that sort of sort of difference of opinion that led to the hands-free hectare work, where I was determined that I was going to bring in some funding in my own name, in my own way, obviously working with Jonathan Gill, where we were going to use sort of Jonathan's drone technology to jump over a lot of these sort of issues that we were finding when we were trying to develop things from scratch. So, you know, it was the idea is, could we use someone else's development in the drone world, put it into a tractor and put it in the field and move the conversation along? Because so many farmers, when you spoke to farmers, said, well, your rugby pitch or your car park demonstration isn't my field, and so far I've never seen a robot do anything, and it's never going to happen in my lifetime. And I used to get that all of the time, and that was where I used to maybe not always see eye to eye with Simon, that I was like, we need to get things in the field, we need to get things demonstrated, and we need to get people here seeing it. So that was the essence of Hands-Free Hectare, to actually take Simon's ideas but put them in the field and get the media and get the public in to see it and change the perspective. And I think ultimately that was a hugely successful way that I have been able to literally go around the world and further share all of Simon's ideas about smaller, lighter, more precise, etc., but just using the vehicle of hands-free, where we pushed it forward and got it into the field. But as I say, that wouldn't have been possible without the Innovate funding being available, and that funding wouldn't have been available without Simon's work. So, you know, I am hugely indebted to his work, and I'd like to think that I and my work has been a very good legacy of Simon. So I've probably rambled around in circles enough there. So, but
no. Thank you very much. Thanks very much for that, Kit. I think the key thing I can see from that is sort of taking the work forwards and kind of standing on the shoulders of giants, as it were. The Hands-Free Hectare stood on the shoulders of Simon's work and taking that forwards. Speaking of giants in the agricultural space, shall we hand over to Andy?
I think perhaps middle-aged rather than giant, Ray. Let's put it that way. I think I don't recognise that description.
Not in stature, just in
nonsense.
kind of
nonsense. We all just do what we do. It's really fascinating to hear your insights, Kit. And I've probably, and I'm going to echo. I'll probably start by echoing what Kit said. I don't think I professionally agreed with Simon Blackmore on most things. For the sort of, let's say I got to know Simon in 1995, so we're knocking on a good 30 years of being aware of each other and our work. And yet, with the benefit of hindsight, which invariably hindsight allows you to see things much more clearly, I'm pretty sure Simon saw things a lot more clearly than I did at most of the points where we professionally locked horns about what our vision of agriculture was and was going to be. And certainly for a early 90s undergraduate of Harper Adams who just believed in bigger, harder, faster, better, more, as far as agricultural machinery went, the idea of tiny little swarm-based robots in Massey Ferguson colours going up and down and individually tending plants seemed complete rubbish to me, which just goes to show that, as you know, several of my betters in the Institution of Ag Engineers have said to me for years, you don't know anything, do you? So, Simon at least had the grace to not tell me that. So I got to know Simon in 1995. I wanted to run a precision farming event. And in the agricultural press, Silsoe College at that point were doing lots of work on what became known as precision farming. So I rang up Simon, introduced myself and said, what about it? And he said, well, you could use the farm here at Silsoe, come and see me. So I got in, I don't know which Volkswagen Golf I had at the time, and drove a very, very long way from Cumbria down to Silsoe to meet Simon and look at a farm building and go, well, we can do this. And, you know, he backed me and said, well, you know, we'll give you a venue, you organise the event. And I drew together anybody who had any kind of technology loosely around precision farming, which back in 1995, 1996, very much revolved around yield mapping, variable rate spreading. I'm guessing maybe, Dick, you can probably cast your mind back to this, maybe, you know, auto steering, a little bit of guidance, but certainly no native auto steering guidance then. And we birthed something which sort of ran as an event for 20 years on and off until the technology became native in other things. But, you know, Simon met a wet behind the ears 24-year-old Harper Adams graduate with an idea and went, no, I think that's a really good idea. And that was very good for my confidence at that point, because whilst I had an idea, he never asked me the $1 million question, which was, have you ever organised an event before, Andy? And, you know, things could have been very different. I could have milked an awful lot more cows by now and built a lot more silage pits had Simon asked me that and said, well, we don't think you're very good because you've not done it before. So I'm eternally grateful that even if he thought of that, he never mentioned it. And, you know, and he set me off on a road. So, you know, but aside from where we went with running technical events, you know, Simon was part of a process of changing a mindset around thinking about using technology for farmers, which, as I say, you know, for someone who sort of became an adult in the late 80s, went through his degree in the late 80s, early 90s as an agricultural engineer at the time of the Smithfield show, and everything was bigger, harder, faster, better, more. So machines got wider, we got more horsepower, we got heavier machines. And Simon was diametrically opposed to that, and rightly so, because soil has a finite shear strength. You damage it by doing the wrong things at the wrong time in the wrong way. And therefore having lighter machines which work with a soft footprint and doing things at the right time on a per plant basis, whilst it felt very pie in the sky and very aspirational and very blue sky, you know, as Kit alluded to, we've got farm droids going up and down the country who, with RTK and across Europe, plant sugar beet or an analogous seed, know exactly where that seed is, go back and weed around it. And those are solutions we can buy today and put in use on our farms. And it's not that long, you know, genuinely, it's not that long. So Simon, you know, just going back to my script, which I've deviated from slightly. When Simon got to Harper in 2011, he was instrumental in the National Centre for Precision Farming, if anyone else can remember that. And we did a few bits around events at that point. But also, Simon was one of the contributing authors to the Institution of Agricultural Engineers produced a report in 2012, which was called Agricultural Engineering, a key discipline for agriculture to deliver global food security. Dick, you were a contributing author for that as well, I seem to remember. But the backstory was the government's chief scientist, Sir John Beddington, produced what he described as his foresight report around global food security, and it didn't mention agricultural engineers once, at which point the agricultural engineering community got terribly upset about this and said, well, how the hell are you going to feed people without the right stuff? So the IAgrE at that point decided that they approached Sir John Beddington. He said, good call. And he put the gauntlet back into the IAgrE. He laid the gauntlet down and said, tell me where ag engineering contributes. At which point we went away, put together a working group across industry and across academia, and put together a report, which I think is still on the IAgrE website if you choose to look for it. I can probably find a link, or Sarah can find a link, and maybe when we put this up afterwards, we'll put a link to it. But despite now being a 12-year-old report, it stands because it talks about the way that technology can help with global food security, which, funnily enough, hasn't gone away. But Simon was part of that group. And, you know, more by, I'm going to say, luck than judgment. You know how sometimes you just have to be in the right place at the right time. I happened to be incoming president of the IAgrE at the point when that report was written by far brighter people than me. But because I was incoming president, I got to write the foreword. So my name's on the front of it, but it's nothing to do with me. So I'm very grateful for Simon's effort in that department as well, and various other people, you know, who are still with us today as well. I'd put down sort of three points to sum up Simon, really. He was visionary. Kit's you know, referred to that as well. He saw the future, if not the timeline, he saw the future. You know, I've just returned just over a week ago from Athens, from the IAgrE 2024 conference with my IAgrE hat on. And, you know, more than one paper, several of the papers presented, and a lot of the work presented relied on Simon's work. So, you know, when Ray talks about standing on the shoulders of giants, you know, there would have been some yawning gaps in the programme at that academic conference a fortnight ago in Athens, had Simon not done the work which he had done in the last 2-3 decades as the bedrock for that learning which is going forward. You know, his work, it was ahead of its time. You know, the things which he did, things which he talked about, but we can see them come to fruition. And he was instrumental in putting that baseline work in place. The second word I would use with Simon, and, you know, I suspect other people will nod to this, he was uncompromising. He knew what he knew and was prepared to stand by it, advocate it, and work towards its fruition. Now, it didn't necessarily lead to particularly relaxing meetings, but if you know what you know, you should have some passion. I respect passion, and that sort of leads on to my third and final sum up, and also some learning for me from Simon, which was he was warm and engaging. I'll use the phrase ideologically, but professionally found myself probably disagreeing with Simon quite a bit during his career when we talked about the way that we saw the future looking. Quite by accident, Anne and I found ourselves having dinner with Simon and Chrissy Blackmore one night via mutual friends we have at home. And they said, oh, we've got some friends coming for dinner. You might like to come for dinner. We didn't know who was coming. I walked through the door to find Simon in the kitchen peeling potatoes. And I had a most entertaining and fascinating and personally enjoyable evening with Simon. And I found actually I quite liked him. And we managed to, you know, if you listen to The Rest Is Politics, you've got Alistair Campbell on one side and Rory Stewart on the other, and their phrase is agreeably disagreeing. And I learnt that I could agreeably disagree with Simon and become friends with him whilst not necessarily seeing eye to eye, which, you know, is a late piece of learning for me, but maybe a good one. So I think that's my Simon testimonial. And, you know, it came as a shock to me to find out that he'd died. And, you know, I feel a real loss, because I think some of the things I've said today, I'd have quite liked to have said to his face, and I probably didn't. So there you go. Bittersweet moment.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Andy. I think, yeah, mentioning passion and visionary and uncompromising. I know I had when I was working in industry, and I came back to see some of my friends that are still at university, and speak to them, and some of the challenges I think they were facing with some of the technology, and the fact that they were being pushed by Simon to keep moving it forwards and keep, and, you know, to really kind of deliver the goods in terms of the vision of the future that he saw. And I think it paid off in terms of, I still remember the picture on the front of Landward's magazine of Kit, and a very fresh-faced Kit and James Thomas, I think, on the cricket pitch with the robot. So I think that's really paid off. So thank you very much, Andy. And I think we can
Ray, I'm just going to cut in quickly, and I'm going to add convincing to Andy's words, because ultimately, just like Andy, I went to Harper wanting to design the next big, heavy piece of agricultural equipment. You know, my dream was to go and design combines, or, you know, something big and heavy and mechanical with lots of metal and welding and things like that in it. And by the time I'd spent 2 years working with Simon as a student, studying under Simon, as it were, you know, I was never going to do that. he'd completely convinced me that that was not the way to go, and the way to go was to be different and push against that. So yeah, there you go, convincing.
Just an aside, I see that we have got the link to the Global Food Security Report is in the chat. So if anyone wants it, just go and have a look in the chat and it's there.
Brilliant, thank you. I think we can hand over now to Bill for a few of his thoughts and memories.
Yeah, my name is Xiong. I also was called Bill in UK and also Norway. Probably I can share you with a slide I just made. Hello everyone, I'm Xiong, now working in China. Actually, I was Simon's master student. I was also very saddened to know about the passing of Simon. Actually, Simon changed my life, my career. So, like, I get my master at Harvard Adams in 2015, and I began to work on agricultural robotics with Simon's guidance. Because before that, I know nothing about robotics. So you can see here, in early days, Simon gave me the first picture, the concept of another weeding robot, and I have built a robot like in the final year, the end of 2015. And this robot is exactly the same to the concept when Simon drew to us. So Simon has a huge impact on my career. So you can see prior to Harper, I studied mechanical engineering. So I'm pure mechanical guys, and I know nothing about computer vision and control. But when I did my master here, I started to know about the robotics and also agricultural robotics. Just like Kate said, I can't remember. So actually, initially, I didn't believe that. I didn't believe farming can be done with robotics. So when Simon talked about agricultural robotics, I just can't believe. But later, I found I really like agricultural robotics. So after I did my master, Simon gave me a very good recommendation, so I got a full scholarship PhD position in Norway. In Norway, I still was working on agricultural robotics, so I built a lot of robots there, like several different versions of strawberry harvesting robots. And I think probably currently we have some leading performance of this robot, because this robot now can work continuously for almost 80 minutes without any interruption. So without Simon's recommendation, I think I can't get this opportunity, because like a PhD position in Norway is really highly paid and it's very competitive. And so like in 2023, I came back to China and working at the NACETA. Now I'm still working on agricultural robotics. And actually in the end of 2021, I have visited Harper. I visited Simon at Harper. And actually I got many offers, and Simon suggested me to work at NACETA because Simon knew like a lot of like agricultural engineering in China. He knows better than me actually. So you can see, I think without Simon and this interesting project at Harper, I don't think I'm working in this field. Probably I'm still working on mechanical engineering now. So he is truly a person who changed my career. Also, like I'm talking from China, Simon also has a great impact on agricultural robotics in China, because when Simon talked about robotics, agricultural robotics, farming with robots in China, nobody believes that, because at that time China is not very well developed. So we even don't have very good machines for agriculture. Many work are done manually. So Simon said about agricultural robots, and not too many people believe that. But Simon gave us many inspirations to like Chinese researchers, including some academicians in China. Academician in China is like the top professor in China. All of them know Simon Blackmore very well. So some of them still quoted Simon's thoughts in China's national event. Also, Simon like built university collaborations, cultivating many students who now is still working in this field, including me. I think this is a very good contribution to China agricultural robotics development. So I think in the future, I'm still will be working on in this field. So we'll carry Simon's vision about precision farming and also farming with precise inputs. I think we will carry on this vision. So now I'm still working on agricultural robots. I have several projects, including robotic harvesting, as well as leather weeding, and also integrating some AI in precision farming. As you can see here, this is a robot I just built in this year. This is a new version of leather weeding robot. I'm trying to commercialize it. I think actually we are the original team working on leather weeding robots. I didn't get the opportunity working on this when I was in Norway, so I think now I should continue to work on this. So yeah, personally, I'm very grateful to Simon who introduced me to this field, and I really like his agricultural robotics. I didn't know this before I met Simon. So yeah, may Simon rest in peace in heaven.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that, Bill. I think it's amazing to see how far and wide Simon's kind of impact and enthusiasm has spread, and how much it's. I'm sure there's many stories like yours where he's helped people to kind of pursue perhaps even a new new direction and kind of get into agricultural engineering and agricultural robotics when perhaps they weren't initially thinking of that. So I think it's great to see that he's helped so much to kind of encourage talent in the sector and kind of as you've said in your personal story, even make recommendations to help you to really kind of improve your own career and also to have a big impact in numerous other countries. So thank you very much for that. I think we'd quite like to sort of invite anyone who would like to say anything to do so at this stage. No, obviously no obligations, but if anyone wants to say anything or add anything, then please please kind of raise a hand. I'm using my phone at the moment. I'm on site on a farm today, so it's
Dick's just put his hand up, Ray.
Okay, Dick, would you mind giving us some of your thoughts and share some of your thoughts?
Yes, thank you very much, Ray. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. Yeah, I said a few weeks ago at a meeting at Basildon that one of the biggest joys, if you like, that an academic has is seeing the success of their students. And that goes across a whole spectrum of activities. And it doesn't matter whether it's at the lowest level or at super doc level. To see somebody make a difference in the world is a huge thanks to what you might have done, your little bit to encourage them along the way. My first experience with Simon was back in about 1982. It was just after the Falklands War. and I was running a project for the UK military on digging slit trenches so that they could have better defences if they got into a shooting war again. And I needed a guy to work for me over the summer as a super technician in a soil bin where we were cutting vertical slices, and that student was Simon. From that point on, he and I became very good friends. Rather like Andy, rather like Kit, we didn't always agree, but you always respected his integrity and what he believed in. To the point when a year or so later, he said, I want to do my undergraduate thesis, something to do with electronics and soils. At that time, Cavernland had a very width plough. But why would you change the width of the operation of a furrow? Maybe because the soil conditions were different and you needed to get to match a constant draft. And that was what we did for his undergraduate project. He then graduated, went off to Africa, I believe, for a couple more years. I was looking for someone to enhance electronics at Silso at the time. And I needed a good teaching assistant to work with the lecturer involved. Simon was an obvious candidate. He did an excellent job of that. He became, within a year or two, a lecturer in probably what was called mechatronics. I can remember Gordon Spohr saying, what the hell's mechatronics, Simon? Because it was that break stage where we were just integrating the mechanical aspects alongside the electronic aspects. And that went forward, and Simon chewed a good work at that. I can remember one night in my office trying to convince him and another member of staff that robotics was the way to go forward. And that was around about 1990, 92, something of that sort of order. At that same time, Massey Ferguson were flogging combines with yield mapping systems on them. And Mark Moore decided that we ought to be invited to that. I couldn't go. Simon went to that. That sold Simon on precision farming. It was that one. And what happened? Mark Moore turned around and registered with us to do his PhD. So we go back to what's going on in the IAgrE with the current president. So Simon then worked with myself and other staff at Silso, just as Andy said, in leading the work into precision farming. And at that time, I don't think we ever differentiated between precision farming and robotics. It was all part and parcel of the same application of technologies to the future. And so it went forward very well indeed. He was then instrumental, again, working with others in acquiring a major HECA project on precision farming, which ran from 95 to about 2001. That pulled back into some of his PhD work, which he was very successful at. And from there, he moved on to Denmark, and I'll leave others to talk about his experience there. But he was always a great pusher for improvements in electronics and communications in agriculture, and has been a great success and well acknowledged around the world. Thank you for your attention.
Nice to see you all, and particularly Professor Godwin, to whom I owe much of my success. I just wanted to say a few words about Simon's impact on education at Harper Adams, and I think my career as an educator at Harper Adams was partly, at least, down to Simon, because he obviously joined just at the point that I was looking for a job, and he gave me the job of sorting out what at the time was called the off-road vehicle design course, which ultimately became automotive engineering. I think Simon often viewed the stuff that I was doing in off-road vehicles with kind of interest, but not necessarily understanding. But despite, and I think that applied very much to a lot of the kind of educational innovation that went on at Harper, Simon was very supportive, even if sometimes he didn't understand what we were trying to achieve. And I think because of that, Harper Engineering Department was enormously strengthened by the support that he gave it, and the influence that he was able to have in kind of professionalizing what was going on and modernizing what was going on. And I think that was to his enormous credit. As a number of other people have said, I was very shocked to hear of his passing. He was always such a sort of youthful and enthusiastic person. It feels very strange not to have him about, and I think he'll be very missed.
Hi everybody, and thanks. A bit late in coming into this, only registered for this only about an hour and a half ago, but when I saw the name Simon, I immediately registered. Again, I was shocked at his passing recently, and I just wanted to give a few personal observations of my interactions with Simon and the type of man that I think he was. When I was wet behind the ears new CEO of one of the UK Agritech centres, Simon was enabled by the senior Harper management to assist me in getting the formative agency that I was given to lead off the ground. And at the time, Simon, and this is where my managerial skills were tested and perhaps in the early stages of being honed, because I had no management experience that could manage someone with the capacity of Simon's brain and his ability to innovate and think for himself. So in short, I agreed with his job title. Thank you, Simon. That is your job title. And Simon then went on to advocate on behalf of our formative organisation for a year and a bit, I think it was. And I think my personal view of Simon is that he was a fantastic draw to the UK for international people who had an inclination to think outside the box and who had an inclination to forward vision and an agricultural future, which may not have been the right agricultural future, but tested their thinking on their vision of an agricultural future. And I know that, Andy, you would have that similar mindset, which is, you want to be tested. And I think everybody should be tested with somebody that has a vision, and everybody should be appreciative of that vision and test that vision. So Simon and I had lots and lots of chats, and it was brilliant to engage with him and the way his mind works. But I'm going to finish on one humorous point, which was we bumped into each other in Kenya at IAgrE, and he was giving a paper and I was giving a paper, and we chatted afterwards. And at the time, I was very enamored with new technologies and the new mobile phone era and everything you could do with the new mobile phone era. So I thought I would pull a rabbit out of a hat and produce a little piece of kit that Simon wouldn't know what it was. And I was, for once, successful. And this was something that plugged into the earlier phones using the phone charging socket. And I gave it to him and I said, Simon, tell me what that does. And Simon was looking at it. He was looking at every angle. He was looking for the lens, the infrared camera, everything like that, the circle, everything. So he said, Dave, I give up. For the first time in ages, I give up. Tell me what that is. So I plugged it in, and it was an electric razor that plugged into your phone. Oh. And that was the only thing that I could do that actually beat Simon. So for that, and for his broad smile when he discovered that he'd for once been beaten by some piece of technology, I thought I'd leave on a humorous note. But yeah, sad to see him passing.
We've got Ken's got his hand up, Ray. I don't think you can see, but Professor Ken Sloan from Harper again. I'm just going to say everyone has made me feel like my ramblings were very circular and rubbish. There you go. Everyone's far better at me.
Yeah. Well, I'm quite happy to go on with some circular ramblings then, Kit. We'll see where I get to. So apologies for being late, everyone. I was given a seminar, an online seminar, and that I wasn't able to change the date on. So I got to know Simon just right at the point when I started at Harper, in fact, just before that, because Chrissy and Simon have common friends with Dan and I. And when Simon knew I was moving from Australia back to the UK, he was one of the first to reach out and to see what we could do to check I was going to settle in well. I think he also wanted to know what the hell I was doing coming back from Australia to Harper Adams. So we wanted to know what my motivation was as well. And so we had a number of times with both of them. And things that it was easy to get into a conversation with them because I was having been involved in the agricultural technology side with Monash, so more the technology rather than the agricultural side. I was very aware of his work. And the thing that really struck me was the generosity he showed, but just the breadth of his intellect when it came to understanding not only the range of possibilities, he was very keen to talk about the range of possibilities, but also just how hard it was going to be to deal with things in particular settings. And from my perspective, it was very, very clear why Harper had travelled so far and so fast as a result of the time that he was with us. And it was also clear to me that he was going to be a champion and an advocate for Harper in everything that he did and continued to do. I hadn't realised until over lunch he then made it clear to me that he wanted to know whether agricultural technology was safe in his hands, safe in my hands as the new head of the institution. So he did have a very clear agenda in terms of wanting to be there, see me and make sure that I was.
You've put yourself on mute, Ken.
I keep doing that. I keep hitting the space bar and muting myself. Main reason I wanted to say something was that obviously I've been in touch with Chrissy over the last couple of weeks, and we are planning an event, an in-person event for later in the year. And I'll be working with Dick and others on that to put that together. So obviously everyone who's on the call would be welcome to be part of that, and we will make sure there's an online link for that for those who wouldn't be able to travel. And we're going to host that with the support of the UK AgriTech Centre. We're going to host it in the UK AgriTech Centre when that happens. So we're just working on a date, and we'll be able to share that in due course. But I just want to associate myself with all of the comments that everyone has made.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ken, for that. And yeah, good to hear that there's an event planned as well. So thank you.
No, I think we're probably out of hands, and we are coming up to our sort of 50 minutes that we normally take. So Ray, I think we'll probably draw it to a close. I'd just like to again reiterate that you know, again, the impact that certainly Simon had on you and I, and probably this very SIG group would not exist ultimately, you know, if it wasn't for the fact that both of you and I worked within robotics, thanks to Simon, that we then got asked to do this for the IAgrE. So a bit of a plug for the SIG is make sure you tune in next time, whatever we end up talking about. Hopefully something, you know, less somber, I guess. Although, as I say, I think Simon ultimately, I see it as a celebration of everything he achieved, that so many people have spoken so positively. So thanks everybody for your input who has spoken. Those who haven't, I'm sure you've got fond memories too, and I'm sure of that. So with that, unless you've got anything else, Ray, we'll draw the meeting to a close.
Yeah, no, I'd just like to reiterate that and say thank you very much to everyone who kind of input today with their thoughts and stories. It was it's great to hear. And yeah, I hadn't really thought about that, but yes, the SIG wouldn't be here and without Simon. So yeah, but yeah, we'll draw things to a close. So thank you everyone for attending.